How's it going? Timcast here. I want to give you guys a rundown on the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. So the NDAA is passed every year. It's a bill that goes through Congress that allows for the expenses and the budgeting for our armed forces. There's two provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act for 2012 that cause alarm, sections 1021 and 1022. Basically, these provisions allow for the indefinite detention of anyone, anywhere, without trial, without charge. They can be held in secret by the armed forces. When these provisions were being proposed, there was some talk about it in the media, and everyone seemed to think that Obama opposed the indefinite detention provisions on a moral ground. But this is simply untrue. In fact, the Obama administration opposes the indefinite detention provisions because they feel that codification may actually restrict the president's power. The administration feels that under the AUMF, or the Authorization for Use of Military Force, they are already granted these powers. Now, the AUMF was passed shortly after 9/11, and it allowed the president to seek terrorists that may have been responsible for 9/11. In response to the indefinite detention provisions, prominent figures such as Chris Hedges, Noam Chomsky, and Naomi Wolf, as well as activist groups such as US Day of Rage and Revolution Truth, have filed a lawsuit against Barack Obama. The lawsuit, called Hedges v. Obama, initially got an injunction placed on the indefinite detention provisions. However, the president's administration has appealed, and it's actually been a wild back and forth of injunctions and appeals to the point where currently, as it stands, the indefinite detention provisions are still on the books. One of the biggest concerns that the journalists have in this lawsuit is that in order to get a story, you may need to speak and meet with known terrorists. And this can be seen as associating, or could be construed in some way to provide associated forces with substantial support. The language in the NDAA is very vague, and this is why the initial injunctions were granted. Now, the activists are upset because they themselves could be deemed terrorists. In fact, the London police have even listed the Occupy London group alongside Al-Qaeda on an extremist briefing that was released. Though it's highly unlikely the president or his administration will come and indefinitely detain a U.S. citizen without charge or trial, these powers can still be passed down to other presidents or other administrations. So, taking a stance on political issues is one thing. You may have a disagreement about how the economy should be run or how our healthcare system should run, but there's one thing we all agree on. Indefinite detention without charge or trial of anyone, especially in secret, is detestable. So check out websites like stopndaa.org, Google NDAA, Google indefinite detention provisions, and learn about what's going on. Take a stance, put your foot down.
Where as soon as you enter that location, your device doesn't work, or they disable a certain aspect of it. Let's say you're at a protest, let's say you're at a big event, let's say you're at a crime scene.